Okay, so I'm Emma. I'm a textile designer, an academic, so I lecture. I teach printmaking and design philosophy to students at university. So textiles and kind of art and design has been a really big part of my life for my whole life, but I'd say like professionally about 8 years, which feels like a very strange thing to say. And I've always been really drawn to printmaking, and I've never quite really fully examined why that was until quite recently. And I realised there was like two aspects to it. Is that I really enjoy colour in my life. I'm a person that likes to wear a lot of colour or have a lot of colour in their home, but I also like the process of printmaking. And one of the things that really draw me to printmaking is it's quite a repetitive craft. So you kind of do the same thing over and over again to create something beautiful in the end. And I find something really mindful in a way and relaxing about doing something over and over again. I've done a little bit of research into that in the past, and I'm really interested in how arts can be helpful um, for mental health. I think they're a really powerful tool. And one of the some of the really interesting things that come out of that research is that it's kind of starting to get proven. There's been small studies done in the past about how um, knitting or stitching or woodwork, the kind of man's shared movement, how that's really beneficial. But in 2018, there was a really big study done, the biggest of its kind, into crafts and art and design before, and it was called the Great British Creativity Test. It was run by Dr. Daisy Fancourt of University College London, and they found there's three key things that having a craft practice in your life can benefit you and your mental health. And those three things were distraction, contemplation, and self-development, and how those three things they've proven is really beneficial to you. So I was really interested in the first one that came up, which was distraction, and that's something I could really relate with. And while I'm not a psychologist, so I do my best and I do my research to be really thorough, one of the things that came up a lot when they looked at therapies for people with, if you have mental health disorders, anxiety, PTSD, is diversion therapy. So this idea of distracting you from some of the intense feelings you can feel or intense pains you can feel. And definitely a kind of craft practice can work really effectively as that. What's particularly interesting about a repetitive craft is there's been a study, it was called Knitting, a Craft and Connection, and it was a small study group done on some nurses, and on their shift breaks they were asked to participate in a knitting group. So knitting is a repetitive craft because you're doing the same kind of stitch and a movement over and over again. And what they found in the small study of the nurses is they were managed to express a feeling of lowered stress during their shifts, and also a lowering in fatigue, which is something that a lot of people in the NHS struggle with, chronic fatigue. And printmaking is definitely a repetitive craft, and there's been studies where it can release serotonin, and also there's been some studies, some kind of like brain studies, where it looks at the amygdala, I think I'm pronouncing that right, about how doing something repetitive can shift your brain into this kind of flow state, which regulates those feelings and the kind of chemicals that are going on in that part of the brain. And that part of the brain, if it's active, is associated to negative emotions and fear. So if we can do something that kind of suppresses that, then we're winning, really. There's a lot of talk in psychology at the moment, and it seems to be really popular in productivity, but I think it needs to be having a conversation in another place about the flow state. And it's this idea of kind of how you can shift your brain by something that's slightly challenging, but you can do over and over again without worrying too much about it. And I definitely feel that way about printmaking. I'm also then going to talk a little bit about colour. Like, as I said, I'm really, really passionate about colour. I love how it can lift a room, lift a person. And while a lot of colour psychology is linked to a lot of social aspects, I think it's can be a really, really powerful tool for you to think about what makes you happy in your life. So I really find things like oranges bring really interesting feelings into my home, and of warmth and coziness. And there's been loads of really interesting studies around pink. And if you're really interested in this, you could do some reading, because there's lots of arguments for and against trying to say colours can do things to you. But there was lots of studies on pink and how it can actually be quite a relaxing colour to be around, and I don't need much excuse to put pink on things, so I was really happy to do that kind of reading. So I think if you're going to use colour in your home, or if you're going to use colour for this workshop, think about if you've got some colour combinations at home that you really like. Is there like an outfit that's got colours that you put together that work really well, and maybe you can use those to create your work. But I'm really biased. I think it's a really great practice, and hopefully I can show you ways without having to rush out and buy really expensive art equipment or rush out unnecessarily to shops at the moment, how you can bring a repetitive and colourful practice into your home using what you've already got. So yeah, I'm going to get started. I hope everyone's excited. I am. So these, I feel a bit Blue Peter. These are ones I made earlier. These are ones I made yesterday. I got really excited about doing this workshop and I just kind of had to practice around with it. So these are made entirely out of potato cuts, and I definitely did potato cuts when I was in primary school. I remember my mum getting them out and on a rainy day, but they can actually turn into quite sophisticated artworks if you want to. And the way I think you can create interest in creating kind of a potato print is a combination of different quite simple shapes. So these, as you can see, I have one piece of potato that was cut into thin lines that I changed the orientation, and then I add semicircles and then small circles, and you can create really interesting pieces. What I also really like about printing is that every single one is going to be slightly different. So if I lift this up a little bit closer to the camera to you, there's some really beautiful texture in there that's something that you can't get if you were going to kind of print it off a printer at home. So I got really carried away with orange yesterday, as you can tell. Now, if you're a person that hasn't used a lot of colour in your life or your home, I would recommend working with 3 colours. 3 colours is like a really good kind of golden rule for putting colours together. So I would pick 2 colours that you're probably going to use evenly, kind of broken this rule a little bit here. So I've got 2 colours, the orange and the pink, and then I choose a contrasting colour that will kind of pop out from those other colours, which is the blue. So kind of work with those together. What also works really nicely as well is if you were just going to use one colour, you can make a really satisfying piece of work. So if this one and this one are just printed on card, you could do that too. And I think everything always looks really neat when it's put in a frame. And one thing I really like about potentially using tester pots that you have from your home decor or other small projects you were doing is that you could create a piece of work that you know is going to complement the colour scheme in your room. So if you painted your room or your kitchen like a green and cream, you could then use green and cream to create this piece that then hangs in there really harmoniously with the rest of the space. So you are using colour to create art without pushing the boat out too far. So that's something that I really like using like kind of these kind of tester pots for. And also, if anyone else is like me, I buy lots of tester pots and then they just kind of sit in a shoebox because I'm a little bit of a paint hoarder. Like I really can't let these things go. So it's a really good way of using them up. But also you could use things like cushion covers, you could do the bottoms of curtains, you could do some t-shirts, do whatever you've got or whatever brings you kind of joy and happiness when you do it. One thing I think that is particularly important is sometimes the process, especially if we're trying to bring in a practice into our life just because we kind of want a distraction from what's going on in the world. Sometimes it's the process that matters more than the outcome. So sometimes just kind of showing up to the desk and doing some printmaking will have greater effects than actually if you make that final thing. So sometimes just make it, and if it doesn't look the way you want it to, oh well, you've probably benefited a lot from doing that creative practice, in my opinion anyway. But there is a great link as well in craft and art and design, or any kind of all sections of the arts as well as like playing music, is that idea of it builds your self-esteem. There's been some studies on how it builds your self-esteem because you envision something, you imagine something, and then you are a part of bringing that into the world, and then it's there. And it really does help just kind of build your confidence in just you being present in the world around you. And I've always been really, really interested in being a part of what we make. I have definitely recognised in myself that I'm quite distant maybe from the objects that I have in my home, so we're all very distant now. Other people make things for us, so there's something really powerful about having something that's made by yourself and then it's up on your wall or on your sofa or something like that. So it's really great. I'm going to start with the technique now. I'll try and keep on top of the questions as they come in. I've got a little bit of delay, but hopefully I can answer them as we go. And I hope we're excited. So I'm going to use some sketchbook paper that I just pulled out of my an old sketchbook that I had knocking around. It's probably a little bit thinner than card. You could use printer paper or cartridge paper, like that kind of thinner stuff that you have at your home. It works well, but sometimes it might kind of ripple underneath the paint, but also, well, give it a go. So I want to talk about the cutting of the potato. If you don't have a potato, or you don't want to use a potato because they're delicious, and why wouldn't you want them to be a part of your dinner, you could use washing up sponges, so anything that's quite firm would work really well, or cardboard works really well as well. What I like about the potato is it is quite easy to carve into different shapes. So here's some of the things I made yesterday to create these prints. And there's this one that I made to create the lines. So if I hold it up a little bit higher for you. So I've kind of pulled out like 3 kind of grooves here to kind of create that kind of straight shape. Oh, my bad. Get my alignment better. And then I've also kind of left the back of the potato there so I have something to grip onto. If you leave a big kind of space here, you're less likely to get paint kind of all over your hands, but also that might be the fun of it. Or you can do it this way, where you slice just slice the potato completely through, and then you just kind of use it as it is. Sometimes these grippier ones are easier for small hands, so if you're doing it with your little ones, this might be a better option. But let's talk about kind of cutting them now. I haven't actually thought about what shape I'm going to make, but we'll give it a go. This is kind of like a smallish, medium-ish size potato. I don't have potato terminology, but here we are. And when you cut it, you are going to want to cut it in its narrowest point so you have as much surface area as possible when you make your stamp. So I'm going to cut it this way, down through the centre. So then we have kind of like the largest circle here. And if your potato is quite fresh, I recommend kind of using something that's been in the back of the cupboard. But if it's quite fresh, it might be quite damp. So you might want to grab kind of like an old rag or tea towel and just kind of squash it down, kind of dry it off a little bit. Like so. And then what you might find is they kind of rock around quite a bit, and that's fine, but if you're finding that it's doing a little bit too much and you don't want to kind of catch your finger when you're carving because it's rocking around so much, you can take a small sliver off of the back. Oh, I did that badly. To create a kind of flat surface on the back there, so it will sit much flatter when you're carving it. But just use whatever you think works best for you. If you're using a really big kind of baked potato, then you can kind of slice it into rounds, and then you can get the most out of it. Or you can carve into it and then just kind of slice it smaller and smaller the more you use it. So try and use as much of the potato as you can without wasting it. Big advocate for that. So what am I going to do? Maybe I'll talk. There's some other ways that you can cut out your potato as well, and anything kind of metal that you have in your kitchen will work really well. So this is a reusable straw that I was given by one of my friends, and this is really great for punching out perfect circles, because perfect circles can be really hard to cut. I'm not very good at it. You could also use cookie cutters. This is the only cookie cutter that I have. It's, I think, from my Christmas gingerbread kit that I had. So yeah, you might have more a well-stocked kitchen than me, so you definitely have a dig through that, see what you've got. Or I've got a drink measurer that's metal. This gets used quite a lot in my house, but that's really great. I might cut a circle out of that actually and use that. So I think I might cut a triangle design. Sometimes it's really hard to decide what you're going to do, so sometimes just use quite simple shapes and they work like in different layouts quite well, and you can kind of rotate them in different ways. So I'm going to cut straight through for this one, and I'm going to create some sort of triangle. I like a bit of a wonky triangle. Maybe let's go like this. Well, I kind of like it with the curved edge. I might leave it with the curved edge. And then what you have really nicely here as well is some quite kind of, I hate the word organic, but organic kind of shapes if you wanted some sort of like round kind of curves. So I'm going to put those to the side and maybe use those later. So here's my triangle. Maybe I'll punch a hole in it, maybe in the bottom. This requires a little bit of strength. Oh, that went through quite easily. Got a little hole in it. Can't get it out now. I need to get my straw cleaner. Oh, there it comes. And then maybe I do it all the way up the centre. Yeah, I'm going to do it all the way up. I say that. Just keep pushing it through. The third one. Oh, that one didn't come out. Give that a little twist. Ta-da! Cool. I think I'm going to leave that one like that for now. Yeah, that'll do with that one. And now, if you wanted to create something like this, oh, a bit of extra potato. What you need to do is you kind of need to carve your design into the edge, and then you take out thin layers. So I'm going to give that a go. If you're quite particular about your making, you can kind of draw a pencil on first and then kind of go around it afterwards. But sometimes it's quite freeing just to kind of cut it and see what happens. So I'm going to do that. This is where I do it really badly, but it'll be fine. Maybe I mark out a... I'm going to do maybe like an heart shape. So with this one you want to push through, like not all of the way, but part of the way. And also I recommend just making sure that you're always cutting away from your fingers. When you get really into something, you can get really close to the blade, and please don't hurt yourself for the sake of potato printing. So we're going to curve that one up like that. Oh, that one's going to be a bit wonky. Oh well. And then I'm going to add a curved bit to the top. This is very similar to the shape I just cut actually, but oh well. There we go. And then very gently, and this is the bit you just need to make sure you don't slice yourself, is take the knife down slightly lower and bring it up to meet that cut that you made earlier. And then you should just be able to peel the edges away. It's really hard to see, I think, but I've made kind of this groove here that you might be able to see. And then I'll bring it in here. Well, that one came out quite smooth. You can start to see it forming there. And I'll slice the top out. There we go. So you can see that this process takes like a little bit longer, but it means you could potentially get a few different shapes and styles that you couldn't get from directly cutting through the potato. But like I said, if you're concerned about cutting potato, because it does require a much sharper knife and a bit more kind of grip strength, cardboard works really well, really well. And also some of that kind of like foamy packaging that we sometimes get in our deliveries, that can work really well. Kind of reuse that rather than sending it straight out to the bin. And then you can kind of just use like craft scissors that are much easier to have a control over. Okay, so I've kind of now made this kind of archy shape here, and then it kind of gives me like a really big surface area to hold on to, which is quite nice. And you can kind of see there's about 0.5 centimetres gap there. That's probably enough of what you need. And then maybe I'll take a triangle out of the top of it, just to give it a bit of something. There we go. Yeah, that's cool. That'll do. It's okay. Yeah, so it's quite simple, quite therapeutic. You sometimes don't know how your potato cut's going to work until you actually print it, but we're going to do that in just a sec. Let me get my old tea towel. I'm just going to dry off the potatoes with. Very exciting. Oh, what colour should I use? Maybe I'll let you decide. So I've got like a yellow, green, which is like quite a nice foresty green, and then a blue. Yeah, maybe if you guys let me know what you want while I get my paper ready. Do you have any preferences? I think I have an opinion of what I might use, but it'd be interesting to see what you think. Oh, green. I kind of want to do the green too. Green and blue. Yes, I quite like green and blue. It says there's a thing that says green and blue should never be seen, but I think it's great. Blue and yellow. Okay. Green seems the most popular. Oh no, now blue. Okay, we're going to go with green, and then we'll add in some different details with these other colours. Cool. So to get started, I would always check what you're wearing. I'm wearing black because it kind of lasts a bit longer. You can get your paint off it. But also you might want to wear some gloves if you've got quite sensitive skin. And now I'm going to get my sheet of paper out, get rid of that chopping board, don't need that anymore. Just double check that you can see all of this. Yeah, great. I guess you'll see my potato cutter. So I'm using this as a tray to put some paint in. If you're anything like me, I've had quite a lot of takeouts in the past year, so I have lots of plastic pots lying around that are waiting to be used for something. So I'm using this one. And I will start with, I'm going to start with the potato that I've cut through completely, like so. What you can do when you're printing is you could start in the top left-hand corner or right-hand corner, whichever feels right to you, and kind of work your way along and then work your way down. I'm just kind of going to eyeball it, but if you're quite particular about wanting things quite straight, you could take your ruler and a pencil beforehand and kind of draw out kind of a grid format so it's really straight. Or if you're kind of working with a shape that has a very particular middle, so maybe like a square pillowcase, or you have a frame that you particularly want it to fit and you know there's a centre point, you could start right in the middle and then work out from it so you know that it's going to be even all the way across the top. So I'm going to start with the green. This is where I open the green and maybe everyone decides that it's horrible, but here it is. Da-da-da! Give them a really good shake, especially if you're using home tester pots. If they've been knocking around your house for a while, they're probably a bit all congealed up together, but give them a really good mix. If you're not using at-home paint, sorry, I forgot to mention, I have this set of just acrylic paints. Like, you really don't have to go out. Maybe raid, if you've got some children at home, you've probably got some in their art kits, so raid those, they work really well too. Use what you have. No one needs to be rushing about to get stuff at the moment. Now I'm going to use my little foam dabber that I was talking about. So it's just literally a piece of foam on the end of a stick. So you could just use a sponge if you have a sponge that you've done with washing up with. You could just use that. It works quite nicely. I'm going to start with this one. Make sure I'm going to dab it dry a little bit again with my tea towel. There we go. And then put a little bit on my sponge. And then I'm going to dab the kind of excess off onto the tray. Just so we kind of want like a thin but even layer on the potato. So then we're going to dab all the way around. I feel like I'm presenting Art Attack or Blue Peter, like a big childhood dream kind of thing here. Thanks for indulging that, guys. So I've got a kind of thin but even layer of green all over my potato. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to start in this top corner here. I'm going to place it down like so. Give it a really good firm push. If you're not feeling too strong, you could use the back of the paint pot to kind of shove it down for you to add a bit of weight. And now let's see how that first print turned out. I kind of like this anticipation. So there's the first one. So I probably added a bit too much paint at the top there, but oh well, keep going. And you'll also find the paint might get more even as you've built up kind of like a base colour on the potato. So I'm going to add another layer here. And then we're going to go in again. I'm going to line it up with the top here. Let's see if we can make some kind of arch shape. And I can feel that it's kind of slipping under my hand a little bit, which probably means that I've put a little bit too much paint on there. But hey ho, practice makes perfect. So yeah, that one slipped a little bit, but you can see we're still making up the colour we want to. Now this is the kind of repetitive thing that I was talking about. You use the same kind of process, which isn't too complex, kind of over and over again. And you can just kind of really get into the rhythm. And that's where we were talking about how you can release those kind of serotonins that we want when we allow the brain to kind of go into this state, which I love. What I think is also really great about this particular process, unlike knitting or other things, is you have to kind of go slowly. You have no choice but to go as slowly as you can. And I think in the world we currently live in, with the amount of distractions and expectations to run around as fast as we can to achieve everything, I think a practice that allows you just to take some time and to slowly execute it is really valuable. There we go. So my prints are coming along. So you can see I've got a little bit of texture here, and it's probably just because I've only just started printing with this potato, and you'll find that you'll get a much more consistent print the further along you get as the kind of layer of paint builds up. Also, potentially, what could happen is that your table's too hard, which is a slightly strange thing to say. When you're printing, you kind of need to be able to push what you're printing, so your potato, into the surface that you're using quite evenly. So if you're finding it really difficult to get a consistent print from your potato, then you might want to layer a tea towel underneath the piece that you're printing. It kind of creates this really nice cushiony effect. If you work in textiles professionally printing, whenever we have print tables or tables that we work on, they are built up with layers of rubber and felt, because that's the kind of amount of cushion that we need to get consistent prints. Starting to get slightly messy hands. I'll give this one a go. Push that one down like so. Okay, that's great. I'm really enjoying this colour. So our cat's saying she likes the abnormalities. I enjoy the abnormalities. I think that's something I like about printmaking, is you don't have full control of how it's going to turn out in the end. And I think I quite like just kind of letting go to what's going to happen. And I also enjoy how every single one's going to be slightly different. I quite enjoy that anticipation of being like, oh, I wonder how this one's going to turn out versus the last one. I'm just going to dab this one in. And I'm just going to continue printmaking a little bit. You can ask me any questions you like. I'll try and drop in some hints as I go across. I think one other thing that's been proven really valuable when they've used craft in terms of when they've committed it and assigned people for it for therapies, is they found that it gives you a common thing to talk about. that's separate from your trauma or your health or your day-to-day life. That you may not have anything else in common with these other people, but it gives you something to talk about, like, look what I created this week, or how did you create that? I'd like to create something like that. So I think it's really, gather some people around to do this with you, kind of grab everyone in your house, get them to sit around the kitchen table, whether that's your parents, grandparents, children, housemates, just grab people together. If you live on your own or you have friends that would like this, maybe you could actually spice up one of those Zoom calls where you kind of all sit together and kind of make some crafts. And they found a lot in groups that have been put together with people who are trying to deal with difficult emotions, is that contemplation part really kicks in when people are making their work together. That second thing that came up from the study is because when you allow yourself to just kind of focus on this, you'll be surprised how well you can kind of deal with some maybe like thoughts or processes or experience or physical traumas as well. How you process those when you've got something else that you can kind of focus on. I'm moving on to my next layer. Oh, I like the idea for wrapping paper. That's really great. I think I'm a big fan of a handmade card as well, so this could be a really great way to do it. How would wouldn't it be so nice to give someone a gift that you wrapped in your own wrapping paper, or and attached your own card to it as well? I just think it would be so nice. So as my design is starting to build, you can see how this kind of triangle shape starts to create some sort of interest across the pattern, and it also leaves these interesting gaps in between as well. And then that might be where I bring in some of my other colour options, maybe. Yeah, let's do blue. Maybe I'll do blue. Put some more paint on. So if you do create any work, please tag us in it. So that's Be Extra, but also myself. So on Instagram, I am emmasmith_textiles. I also have a website and a blog. You can probably find that there. And I might share some more at-home things you can do with what you have available to you. I think it's really important to get us all involved in craft. But yeah, if you do make anything, tag us in it. We'd really love to see it. But if you really get into this process and it's something that you start to really enjoy and you want to think about investing in some different materials, definitely start looking into lino cutting and lino carving. And also there's a really deep history of this process. It's called block printing. It originated from India. It was a big part of the Silk Road, the Silk Route, the kind of history of textiles. It has a lot of cultural history and also modern history as well, to do with places in India such as Jaipur, which is in the north. So yeah, if you want to start thinking about, if you really enjoy this, lino carving might be a really good option for you. If you want to work on fabrics, so if you want to work on something and then fix it, I really recommend chalk-based paints. So you can get fabric paints, but there's these chalk-based paints. So this one is by Annie Sloan. So she makes really great paints, and these tester pots are really affordable and they last ages. I've done so many projects with these. I think I've done a whole table and I've still got stuff left. And now chalk paints are great because if you were to do them on a cushion cover, all you need to do is heat set it before you wash it. So you need to get like a really hot dry iron once the paint's dry and dry over the top, and you will get a really like uniquely decorated pillowcase for your own home, and then you can just wash that on a cold wash and it doesn't come out. So I don't know, you've got plain curtains, maybe you want to add a border to it. I really recommend those chalk paints, they're really great. And she has lots of different colours, so some really traditional colours, but also some really contemporary takes on what's popular as well, so you can find all the colours you kind of want. I'm going to add this final one, and then I'm going to think about potentially bringing in some circles of blue, I think, into the gaps. Dab, 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 dab. I'm having to remind myself to talk to you because I do get in such a kind of relaxed flow state when I'm printing. I could kind of sit here and do it for hours and hours and hours. Well, Caroline, that's a really nice idea if I could make Christmas cards. Oh, that's such a, yeah, I'd love to do that actually. I'd love to create things that we can then donate. Maybe we could do a competition as well. I've done printmaking competitions before where we've got members of the projects to design tote bags. Oh, you could print on tote bags. That's an option. And I think it's really great to share it. Okay, so I've got my green here. And there's a lot of talks about green and blue. I will carry on doing the rest of this. And one way I really enjoy bringing in circles is using the end of a pencil with a rubber on the end of it. I say that and now I can't find it. So using just one of these, they work pretty well. So I'm going to open up the blue, give it a little shake. Oh, mine's got one of those. Very handy for your house. Not very handy for this situation. Paintbrush lids. And then I'm going to just dab the excess off my pencil there. There we go. And then I'm going to start adding in some circles. Yeah. It's just so, it's satisfying finding things, obviously things that you don't need to use again, and using them to create interesting shapes. One thing I've done is I've reapplied paint every time I've printed, but what you could do is you could not do that and you could end up with some gradient effects within your printing. So you could print, you can repaint every other and then you'll have kind of like different levels of opacity and intensity of the colour. Maybe I fill all of these in. I think I get really carried away with my pencil now. I really like the combination of the blue and the green. I think it's really nice. Very underused colour palette in design. So here we are. Bringing some greens and some blues together. I'm going to do another row, I think. I'm getting quieter and quieter. You can tell I'm really sinking into the process now. What else should I do? I want to add the, maybe I'll use the striped one from yesterday. I'll add in some, maybe a different kind of zigzag through here. Yeah, let's give that a go. I'm going to get myself a clean sponge and start using this one. Yeah, I agree. I love potato printing with children because I think it's just such an accessible way for them to kind of understand how colours can work together and shapes can work together. I just think this practice is something we can totally do as families that can bring people together, because I think you could be like a top tier artist who makes amazing work and still enjoy this process, or you could be 5 years old and never picked up a paintbrush before and have a great time as well. And as I said, it gives you a talking point. You can sit around the dining room table and talk about what you've been up to while at the same time creating the work. Okay, so I put my blue on. How am I going to do this? Let's decide. Maybe I'll put it in here, like so. Oh, you got a nice shot of my top of my head there, sorry. Push that down. Let's see how those stripes are turning out today. It is a day-old potato, so we'll see. Off we go. Nice. Oh, I added up a finger splodge. Oh well. That's a bit of interest to it. Use my old tea towel to clean off my hand a little bit. Add some more paint. I'm going to pop that maybe this way and cross those over. I need to stop leaning over the paper. Push that down. Cool. See how we're starting to build up different shapes altogether. So I think I'm going to leave it there, everyone. If you have any more questions, please pop them in the comments. Message me extra, message me. Thank you again for spending a little bit of your Saturday afternoon with me. I hope I've given you some inspiration to do some things at home and use what you have. Art is something that should be accessible to all. You don't have to run out and spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on specific paints or particular tools. You can use what you already have at home. Thank you for all being so kind as well. This is definitely live is definitely a new thing for me, which is strange even though I teach all the time. But thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you have a great day. Bye everyone.